Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. Today we are looking at Robocop Citizen's Arrest Issue 1 from Boom Studios. This is written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Jorge Solejo, colored by Doug Garbark, lettered by Ed Dirkshire. So this book takes up several years after the first Robocop. It opens up with a woman giving birth, her husband, who's a police officer, trying to say that he's on the Metro PD's insurance, and the lady at the desk is like, no, you don't have insurance as of today. You can thank that guy on TV. Well, this guy is the new owner of OCP, and of course he has to pay monthly installments with 22% interest rates because he has no insurance. So we get some news bulletins, these people, talking heads, sitting on a couch blathering on. The police officer sits down next to his wife, and the doctor's like, not a hotel, so they have to get going. Well, the officer, who is now a former officer because everybody just lost their jobs, leaves his sleeping wife and baby and goes out for a walk. He goes down to the local watering hole, and who should be sitting down at the other end of the bar but Alex Murphy, the Robocop. Turns out he lives in the area somewhere, in an area called the Shore. Now, Detroit's still a dump because times change, Detroit doesn't. And OCP has been reformed. They discuss how Robocop went semi-rogue, and they imply sort of a vigilantism. Well, 5 years pass, and things are not getting much better for the average person. Corporations are still running everything, including the law enforcement personnel, which are now actual androids, who are controlled by OCP's new Robocop app, r/cop, and you make a deposit that is automatically withdrawn from your phone, and once it's withdrawn, your report goes in, and if it is a real crime, you get 5 times the amount back. And they play up like these fake interviews throughout that are like pseudo ads where they're talking to people on the street, and they're saying, yeah, at first it was weird, but it's kind of fun. Now it's a game. Now law enforcement is a game. They even show this poor woman getting flogged, and the new head of OCP is this really creepy looking guy with a beard that looks vaguely like a dude I used to know, only a little more like drives a white van kind of thing. So down on the shore, this man Leo is talking with his son James and sends him over to the neighbors, and he follows Robocop into his house and confronts him. Meanwhile, the new owner of OCP is paying off the mayor to go down and try and settle things with an area called the Ruins. Now, the Ruins is obviously the bad side of the tracks, and he is supposed to talk with the people there and kind of alleviate their concerns without the CEO getting his hands dirty, so it's all on the mayor. Plausible deniability and all that. Well, during this time, we understand that Robocop was shut down for a total of 60 seconds, which allowed some OCP men to come in and install a program in his head called retirement, and he can't even pick up his gun. This program is corrupting his system, and they've effectively made him useless. So he just kind of mopes around all the time, wearing this giant coat and pants, which I don't really think he needs, but okay. So he just kind of exists, and it's sort of a living hell for him. Well, Leo takes this information and heads out to see what he can do, because it turns out his wife works for the company that may have written the program, and he wants her to steal it. Meanwhile, a robot tells a little girl with a dog to stop pooping, and the meeting that the mayor's at goes rather awry when the citizens are saying, look, we don't want gentrification. We know what that means. All these nice things will be there, but we don't get to use them. We won't be here. And he's going to report the mayor on the app with this phone that he was given by OCP. Well, when he tries to do that, it zaps him and disintegrates him and sends everyone running, including the mayor. The mayor knows it was a setup, but the CEO explains to him that it will, in fact, start a riot down there, and it'll give them a reason to send the troops in and take everyone out and clear the area. And the only chance they have really for the underclass is for Robocop to be deprogrammed by this former police officer and his wife. Now, there are obviously a lot of left-leaning talking points in here, but a lot of those were in the original Robocop movie as well. The threat of private militarization of the police, privatization of the criminal justice system in general, and everything else that comes with heavy corporations, large tyrannical corporations not caring about the people, but caring about their bottom line. So it actually works really well in that respect. It really does fit the spirit of the first Robocop movie. I don't know, there were a few things I didn't particularly care for about it, but I have to admit it was really well done. And it's not that heavy-handed. The gentrification thing was obviously pretty heavy-handed, but that was probably about it. But there are a lot of things in here that are legitimate concerns. The fears of being displaced, fears of corporations taking over, the corruption, that sort of thing, influence of the news media. That's all pretty well handled in here. It had a very, very mature mentality to it, I think. I think that even though a lot of the issues that were being addressed were definitely a little more left-leaning and anti-corporation, it was handled very maturely and very well done. So I think if you like Robocop, the movie, you'll probably like this book. And honestly, I'm going to pick up the next issue and see what it has to offer. And hopefully it won't go full SJW on us and it'll still maintain some semblance of rationality. I know Mr. Wood's work tends to be way more left-leaning, but this actually is where it worked pretty well. So hopefully it won't go too far off the deep end and they'll be able to rein it in and tell a good story that everyone can enjoy. The art, as far as that goes, was okay. Wasn't blown away by it. It's not my style, but it's pretty well done for what it is trying to be. And it didn't have too much of that heavy-handed manga crap that I hate so much. So I was okay with the art. It's not the best, it's not the worst. Kind of middle of the road. I think there's a lot of room there where the artist could really come out with a very strong style. So that's my take on the book. As always, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we are looking at Robocop Citizen's Arrest Issue 2. This is from Boom Studios 2018, written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Jorge Solejo, colored by Doug Garbark, lettered by Ed Dirkshire, main cover by Nimit Malavia, subscription cover by David Rubin. Now, if you're a more left-leaning individual, liberal, you'll really like this book, I think. It's definitely got a little bit of a bias, but it's not heavy. Well, it's heavy-handed, but it's not poorly done. It's not blatant beating you over the head with it. But it is, I would say, definitely a liberal production, but it's really well done. It's well written. Brian Wood has definitely got a lot of talent. Now, we start out with Omnicorp giving a speech. The CEO, bald guy, he is talking as Alderman Moses is being taken across to his burial, and some little kid gets harassed by some drones because she's home alone and they're calling Child Protective Services. The news crew is commenting as everything's going on. The RCOP app is now giving away prizes like locations in New Bright Hill, which is going to be what the Ruins is replaced with, and that sort of thing. Well, meanwhile, Mrs. Reza is getting the retirement program that is keeping Robocop in place and getting it from the archives. Omnicorp has their own idea what to do, and the new CEO of Omnicorp wants Robocop deactivated. Well, they find out that he's been hanging out with Leo Reza. They identify him, and Leo is unemployed, but his wife works for OCP, so she has a job, but he doesn't, sounds like. So they identify him, and they can't find any dirt, but they do find out that she got the program from the archives. So they do what any good corporation would do, apparently, and send a drone out to kill him. And a small crowd gathers to see what's going on. Well, it comes across the wires, and we go to the news crews and hear how Alex Murphy is a threat now to public safety, and one of the super right-wing supposed commentators is like, kill him now. And of course they're considering that. They want to take him out, but there's a lot of civilians around, so they tell him that he's under arrest, and Mrs. Reza gives him the chip, uploads the program from the chip into his system, takes the retirement program out, or at least deactivates it, and Reza gives him his gun back, and Robocop says, your move, creep, and takes out the drone, and that's where the issue ends. Now, it's actually a lot better than I'm making it sound. If you're interested in it, it definitely is a decent book. It's just not my type of book. I don't like politics in my comic books most of the time, but I can respect that it is well written. This is not as heavy-handed as the first issue with the police state tactics. It's alluded to, but not quite as heavy in this one. So So if you're a liberal person and you like the Robocop movie franchise, and if you like the theme of corrupt corporations and that sort of thing, then this might be up your alley. It wasn't for me, but I can see where a lot of people like it because it is well done. It's just not my thing. So if you're into that, I would recommend it. But if you're not into the political type stuff and you just want an action adventure, this isn't likely going to be for you. But that's just my take on it. As always, thanks for listening, and we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Robocop Citizen's Arrest Issue 3 from Boom Studios. This is written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Jorge Solejo, colored by Doug Garbark, lettered by Ed Dirkshire. The main cover is by Nimit Malavia. The editors were Eric Harburn and Sierra Hahn. Now this, of course, is the Boom Studios book, which we've looked at previously. Now the citizens are starting to come together in the shores, and there are a bunch of ex-cops, ex-EMTs, ex-nurses, that sort of thing. They're all living in this area that's really starting to run down pretty heavily. They've been ignored by the city and the corporations, and they're starting to kind of get sick of it. They've seen reductions in their pensions, as much as 80%. They're getting property taxes thrown at them as well, and they're trying to bankrupt the shore effectively. One guy blames Robocop. Some other people at the meeting aren't blaming him because he was one of them, and they all agree that they protect their own, and Murphy was cops, so they're gonna kind of look out for him. So they throw their phones that were given to them by OCP into a burn barrel, and they're starting to kind of like coalesce as a group. Well, the news media is of course promoting anti-Robocop information. He is wanted, and they're just blindly repeating what the corporation says. Meanwhile, the Robocop androids are out burning the ruins to the ground, chasing away people, destroying their property, and saying things like, "What are material possessions anyhow?" And Robocop shows up and blows away several of the robots, destroying them and dismantling them. And he is attacked by these drone shards that kind of get into his joints, but he is rescued by his human friend and repaired. This is all kind of weighing on the CEO because a lot of the humans are rebelling and taking shots at the machines and equipment that are supposed to be building this fancy new cityscape for OCP. And the CEO is really fed up with that. He likes his androids, but they are not good enough. And the designers offer him something else, something that will quote crack skulls, as he explains later in a briefing. Now it puts the human element back in. They're obviously talking about some sort of cyborg like Robocop coming back, and they want to have a machine that can be deliberately cruel and choose to hurt people as opposed to the safer androids that aren't necessarily targeting human life. They're just more like enforcers. So these new robots are probably going to be in the next issue, but we also learned that Robocop has a new 5th directive. The 4th directive was deleted. That was the never oppose an OCP officer, but there's a new 5th one that apparently is part of a program that he wrote himself and was instituted by this officer's wife. So pretty interesting stuff. This was actually a really good issue, I thought. It really kind of advances the story. The head-on approach isn't going to work for Murphy this time. The drones seem to have an upper hand on him with these like needle dart things that get in his joints, and there are a lot of upset humans that he may be able to rally with, especially because a bunch of them are ex-cops. Could be really interesting where this goes. Kind of continues the social themes of corporations controlling everything and people resisting that. If you're into that sort of thing, you will definitely like this book. It's not as social justice-y as I expected, but there are some elements that could be seen that way. I think it's more just a warning about the power that big companies have if left to their own devices and not seen with regulation and oversight. I think there is some messaging here, but I don't think it's nearly as heavy-handed as it could be, and it's not quite as social justice oriented as many people might say, at least not in my opinion. But it is well done. Brian Wood is a pretty good writer. I was actually pretty impressed with the level of talent here, and this book is not going to be for everybody. Just be aware of that if you're looking at picking it up. There are a lot of themes in there that could be seen as controversial, I would say, but I think it's pretty well done for what it is. And if you're into anti-corporations and things like that, you might find this interesting. The art is the same as in previous issues. It is pretty heavily stylized. It's starting to really grow on me. It has kind of a semi-Frank Miller inspiration look to it. It's a little blockier than a lot of people like, but it seems to work pretty well. So overall, I thought it was a well done book, and it might be worth checking out if you're into the themes. So on that note, that'll do it for me. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you like the video, hit like and consider subscribing. Patreon link is in the description or on the About page if you want to help support the channel so that I can get more comics to review. And we hope to see you on the next one. Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time we're looking at Robocop Citizen's Arrest issue 4, written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Jorge Solejo, colored by Doug Garbark, lettered by Ed Dirkshire. Editors were Eric Harburn and Sierra Hahn. Now, that starts off in the ruins with the Resistance fighting a bunch of the Robocop androids. And a press conference is starting, interspersed with this action, with the mayor and the old man of OCP, who's that weird bald guy with the stupid beard. The press conference is that they had thought their vision through and it was going to be beautiful and peaceful, but obviously it's not being appreciated, so they're going to cancel it and just leave the ruins and the shore to become trash. The old man starts communicating with Robocop and his partner through one of the androids and starts saying, "Hey, guess you win. Oh, well, we tried." Kind of lull them into a false sense of security. And then he talks to an orbital platform and they drop a bomb. It's pretty crazy. But while Robocop is down, some androids come in and snatch up his buddy's body. Of course, most people think he's dead, but we all know that that's not exactly the case. So this was actually a pretty good issue. Like the others, it has a very left-leaning feeling to it, and the statements in it were definitely much more left-leaning this time. There were phrases like "justice prevails" and different types of buzzwords that were much more heavy-handed in this issue than in others. The left-leaning slant is way more obvious than it was previously. That would be my only real complaint about this, is the politics got a little heavy-handed in the dialogue. Otherwise, it was a really well done issue. If you're on the left and you don't like corporations or something like that, this would be a fine book for you. It's very well done. It's just not my thing. I am kind of liking Jorge's art, and Brian Wood is a very talented writer. I just think that if he took the politics out, he'd probably get a little further than where he is with the story that he's trying to craft. So just dial it back a notch or two and you might have a little more broad appeal with your messaging. Overall, I thought it was a solid issue. It was just way more heavy-handed with the politics than it needed to be, and that, I think, hurt it overall. Still a decent read. I think this issue is probably the weakest one so far, but still pretty decently done for what it is. But that's just my take on it. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss future reviews, and we hope to see you on the next one.
We are about to embark upon a series of strange and exciting, dangerous adventures. Adventures that will lead us to all parts of the world.
Hello and welcome to another Bad Comic Review. This time I'm looking at Robocop Citizen's Arrest issue 5. This is the final issue of the miniseries, written by Brian Wood, illustrated by Jorge Solejo, colored by Doug Garbark, lettered by Ed Dirkshire, main cover by Nimit Malavia, subscription cover by David Rubin. I have the main cover issue, so if you want to see the other one, you'll have to look online. Now, the editor was Gavin Gorenthal. Editors were Eric Harburn and Sierra Hahn. Now, we open this issue picking up an unknown amount of time after the events of last issue. Leo Reza is now a Robocop, and he is driving around executing criminals. He executes a man in front of his family even, and it's pretty brutal. Meanwhile, on the shore, his son and wife are getting on with their lives when this new Robocop pulls up, and Sarah pulls James back into the house. The kid thinks that it's his dad, but she's like, no, your father's gone. We don't know who this thing is. OCP is directing Leo, and they want him to basically take out the original Robocop. Well, Murphy obviously has a problem with that, and he tries to talk some sense into the guy, but Leo is definitely pretty far gone, and there's this thing in his helmet that spikes his brain with like an electrical impulse, so OCP starts trying to control him. Things get a little bit out of hand. Apparently, Leo does not have any directives or anything like that. He's effectively just a hitman, and Murphy's trying to convince him to admit that to himself, and OCP tries to kill him before Robocop can talk some sense into Leo. It very hurriedly comes out that, yeah, Leo can be saved. They're going to raid the old man of OCP where he's locked up in his tower, and the guy had decided that the city of Detroit wasn't worth it, and he's just going to isolate himself in his tower and let everything else rot. This was by far the weakest issue of the entire miniseries. It felt very rushed, and it felt like they really weren't sure where to go with this. They were kind of hinting at another Robocop in the last issue, and that was a pretty obvious thing that they were going to build another Robocop. And when they spiked Leo in the last issue, I kind of assumed that's what they were going for, but it felt very meandering in this issue. It didn't feel very natural. This issue was definitely very forced. Like, there could have been another issue in the miniseries to extend it slightly and have more time for this story arc to really breathe, because this issue really tried too hard to put too much into it, and it felt like they had too many plot threads early on that could have been dropped in favor of expanding this part of the story. So I don't think it wrapped up quite that well, and it just ends with a raid on the building, and we don't actually find out what happens. It was a little bit of a weak ending in that respect as well, and Murphy says how it's going to be his last one, so they're obviously setting up Leo for future Robocop stories, which I also find kind of disappointing, because then it starts to look like replacement theory, where we're getting a new Robocop, but who's a minority, and they're doing the same thing they were doing with Marvel heroes. That's how it will look to people. I don't think that was the intention, but that's how it's going to look. And Murphy talks a little bit out of character in this. The way he talks is a lot more relaxed and a lot less robotic, and it didn't really fit with the character too much, especially if you were used to the movies. It just felt very hurried, and this book felt out of place in the rest of the series. Otherwise, the art is consistent with the previous ones, but I felt it just wrapped up too soon and probably needed another issue, or it needed some of the early subplots to be taken out so that this one could have a little more space to expand upon it. They should have had Leo as the new Robocop at the end of last issue for 3 or 4 pages, and then this issue would have that space to elaborate on what they were trying to do. So I think a lot of people reading this are going to be a little disappointed in the ending, but if you like the art style, it'll be fine. I felt a little cheated by the ending. I thought it was a little weak. Not the worst I've ever seen, but I don't know if I would recommend it for $4. If you're going to pick up this miniseries, do it either through the bargain boxes or in the trade paperback, but I don't think I would recommend the trade. I would just say wait and get them out of the bargain bin. I don't think I got my money's worth out of this one. It just felt a little hurried and a little too convenient for the way everything worked out. But that's just my take. As always, thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing so you don't miss future episodes, and we hope to see you on the next one.